Baruch Hashem.
Okay, we're up to Yutes Amid Beis. Yutes Amid Beis. And Boy Rav Papa. Amar Ravasi. Where lines get wide, 3 lines down. Amar Ravasi Rabbi Yochanan. Maisa Sheni me'emasai chayam malav. Maisa Sheni, at some point in time, you're going to be chayiv malchus. At which point in time are you chayiv malchus? Mishara pnei achoyma, where you seize it comes into the walls of Yerushalayim. Once it comes in the walls of Yerushalayim, right, then therefore you no longer can be paida. At this time, if one would eat it outside Yerushalayim, if you would take it outside Yerushalayim, you would be chayiv malchus. So again, you bring it in. At that time, it gets a chayiv that you can't be paida. And if you would eat it at that point in time, you would be chayiv malchus. My timer, Domakra, it says, the pasuk says, Ki im lefnei Hashem elokecha teichlenu, b'makom asher yivcha Hashem elokecha boy. Okay, you should be in the front of Hashem. You should eat it in the place that Hashem chose. Teichlenu. Uksiv. That's in pasuk Yud Ches, and then in pasuk Yud Zayin, the pasuk before it says, "L'sucha lecha b'sharecha ma'isa degoncha b'tiroshcha b'yitzarecha." You're not able to eat outside Yerushalayim and Yesharim. You can't eat ma'isa and b'chayros. We went through that pasuk. Okay. Kol heicha de karina be'lefnei Hashem elokecha tochlena. Anytime it says in front of Hashem, you should eat it. Meaning when you have the chiyuv of ma'isa sheni, which is what lefnei Hashem. Karina be'lesucha lecha b'sharecha. That's when loisucha lecha. That's when you can't eat it. So once it's lefnei Hashem, once it's lefnei Achayma, it's inside Yerushalayim. Then loisucha lecha b'sharecha to go in and take it out. Okay, that's the statement. I forgot to mention, fellas, that no longer do we have Rashi in this Masechta. We have the Rivan. If you look at the left side, go up. If you see about where the lines get thin, about 8 lines down, it says Rabbeinu Tahor, right? No. Rabbeinu Gufay Tahor v'yotzin nishmasa b'tayra. He didn't explain anymore. Mikan ve'elech loshen talmidoi Rav Yehuda Rav Nasan. Rav Yehuda Rav Nasan, or the Rivan, was Rashi's son-in-law, right? Rashi had 3 daughters, and Rivan was one of his son-in-laws, right? So therefore, the Pirish now, until the end of the Masechta, is the Pirish of the Rivan, not the Pirish of Rashi. So it's okay. So here's the given. When are you chayiv? When it's roy pnei chayma, when it comes inside. Good. Meisivei, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Koyin Shalsa B'Yadoi Te'ena Tevel. He has a fig of Tevel. So again, we're familiar with the order of Afroshas Trumas and Maisa. You take off first Truma Gedoyla, then Maisa Rishon. The Levi takes off Maisa Rishon, Trumas Maisa gives it to the Koyin. In the 3rd and the 6th year, you have Maisa Ani. In first 2, 4, and 5, you have Maisa Sheni. Good. So now you have figs that you had not tithed, that you didn't go ahead and take off Trumas Maisa, and that's called Tevel. Now what happens? You say Teina zu Trumasa Ba'ukza. The Teina, and this, where is the Truma? It's near the oikets, the part of the fruit that's near the oikets. The oikets is the stem that it grows from. Where that fruit is, that part should be Truma. Ma'aser Rishon b'tzvaina, and in the north of the fruit it should be Ma'aser Rishon, u'Ma'aser Sheni l'droima, and in the south it should be Ma'aser Sheni, v'hu shnas Ma'aser Sheni, v'hu b'Yushalayim, and it's speaking where it's the 1st, 2nd, 4th, or 5th year, and in Yushalayim, oy Ma'aser Ani, or it's the 3rd and 6th year, v'hu b'Gvulin, right, and you are what, in the outside, where you don't have to be in Yushalayim. Achla, if he eats it, like a achas, right? Why? Says Rashi, the lehitzia midi tevel b'kriya shem zeh, because it's still tevel. In other words, you almost were mafresh totally, but you were not exactly mafresh totally. As Rashi continues, right? Uka'achol ma'aser rishon hatavel l'trumas ma'aser. You didn't eat what? You didn't separate trumas ma'aser. Uka'avar alav de tevel, and you were over on the lava of eating tevel. So therefore, the kohen who eats this, he'll be chayiv on tevel malchus. Aval issa truma de ka'achol leka. There's no issa that he ate truma. Why? The kainu, because it's the kain. V'nehidi havi amat trumas ma'isa b'mtzisa having matzah achol kula v'loy lucky midi, right? V'loy lucky, and good if he would have gone ahead and finished the job and called trumas ma'isa in the middle, like midi the havi trumas ma'isa l'kayin v'hu kayin v'ma'isa rishon v'ma'isa sheni l'laka. Why? Because the avzarim shari. In other words, the only reason you're getting malchus over here is, guys, is the tevel of trumas ma'isa. That's the only reason you're getting malchus. Okay, so far we don't have a kasha. Again, we're leading up to a kasha that you told me that it's covered ma'isa sheni when it's raw pnei chayma, when it sees the walls of Yerushalayim. V'zar she'achla like a shtayim. However, a zar that eats it, he's going to get malchus twice. He's going to get malchus twice for eating truma and eating trumas ma'isa. Good. What? Yeah. Tevel, right? She'ilu b'tchila achla eina loika el achas. If the Zar would have eaten it before the kohen was mafrish's truma, then he would only get one because of tevel. But since the kohen had separated the truma from the oiket's part, so he ate truma. In addition, he ate tevel. Okay, so now he's going to get twice. Now, what's the kasha? Nothing yet. Taima, the reason that Maisa Sheni is in Yerushalayim. Therefore, what? You don't get malchus on its achila. Ha bigvulin. But let's say it was not in Yerushalayim, it was in the Gvulin, outside Yerushalayim, and the Zar ate it, like a shalosh. He would get 2, and the Kohen would get 3, and the Kohen would get 2. Because why? You get Chayv eating Ma'aser Sheni chutz Yerushalayim. The Afagav the loy ro pnei chayma, even though it did not see the pnei chayma because it was tevel, the ayel v'afki. Here's the kasha, guys. Lam the shakasha. In order to be chayiv for achilus ma'isa, it has to be that the Maisa Sheni went ahead and saw the walls of Yerushalayim. Good? Yeah. Over here, the Maisa Sheni did not see the walls of Yerushalayim. It was in a state of tevel. It was in a state of tevel. So therefore, it never saw it. So you're telling me once it saw the walls and you took it out, you should get malchus. So l'chayra, you're not getting malchus. One more time. Taima d'isi b'Yerushalayim. The reason why you're not getting malchus for eating Ma'aser Sheni because in Yerushalayim. Ha bigvulin like a shalish, but bigvulin you're going to get 3. The afagav the lav roya pnei chayma, right? Even though it's not pnei chayma, so that's the kasha. Even though it did never see pnei chayma, right? You're time, says Rashi. Time, read on. Time of the Ma'aser Sheni b'Yerushalayim, Ma'aser Sheni b'Gvulin, Ma'aser Sheni b'Gvulin like a shalish, right? The Ayli Yerushalayim, the Kor Lashem, the Hoder Afke Chutz, the Chazi Ma'aser Sheni pnei Chayim. Okay, in other words, he's asking kash like this. He's asking. Let me get the kasha straight. I thought I had it straight. Let me get the kasha straight. Okay. The reason why Ma'aser Sheni, the reason he's not getting malchus for eating Ma'aser Sheni because it's in Yerushalayim. Let's say it didn't get to Yerushalayim. It didn't get there at all, and he ate it outside. You get malchus. But 1 second, it never went inside. I'm correcting myself. Let's go back, guys. Outside. Guys, look at me. The guy is outside Yerushalayim. He has a fig. He goes ahead a little bit this way, Chaim, so I can see it from me. Yeah, move it. Okay. So you have a fig, and you're outside Yerushalayim, and you're taking from this fig, you're going, this part is Truma, this part is Ma'aser Sheni. Now, good. It said Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim. You were in Yerushalayim. So you got Malchus 1 for your Zar, you got Malchus for eating Truma, and 2, you got Malchus for Trumas Ma'aser. You got 2. Now, why didn't you get Malchus for Ma'aser Sheni? Because in Yerushalayim. Let's say you weren't in Yerushalayim. Let's say you were outside. You never made it inside. Good? Right? You would get Malchus. The diak, you're only not getting Malchus because you're in Yerushalayim. If you never made it to Yerushalayim, you get Malchus feeding Ma'aser Sheni, even outside. But 1 second, it never was raw pnei abayis. Why are you chayiv outside? You never saw the walls of Yerushalayim. That's the kasha. That's the kasha. In other words, you never made it inside. So if you never made it inside, then you never saw the walls. Again, if you look at the brisa before, guys, look at the brisa before. The last line on the Amid Beis. V'shnas ma'aser sheni v'hu b'Yerushalayim. Right, the bottom line. It's making a statement. You're in Yerushalayim. That's why you're not getting Malkus for eating ma'aser sheni. Let's say you were in Yerushalayim, you never made it there, you would get Malkus. But one second, according to you, who said it was a papa? Why are you getting Malkus, Rabbi Yochanan? Kashan Rabbi Yochanan. Why are you getting Malkus? It was never Roy Pnei Chayim. I never saw. What's the answer? It was inside and you took it out. It was inside, you took it out. Okay. Says the Gemara, very good. Says the Gemara, the ayil v'afke, you brought it in, and then you brought it out. You brought it in, and then you brought it out. So therefore, it saw the walls. Once it saw the walls, okay. What's the chiddush? Guys, look at the Rivan. Ihachi ma'il the bishlemi armit ma'aser sheni b'gvulin loika shalosh. You're going to get malchus afagav loy chazah pnei chayma, even though we never saw the walls. Ashmin and tuva. You're telling me a chiddush. The chayiv olav afal pishla pnei chayma. V'yitzrich lemisnei mishum diyuka dida ha b'gvulin. In other words, but so you have to make the deal. That time Yerushalayim you part of it outside chayiv. But elai armin and b'da ayil v'afke. You tell me it saw the walls of Yerushalayim. You took it outside. Malam memra. What's the chiddush? Loihi it's drich v'lav the yukadidei the pshita that feel kind like ala tevel v'zar ala truma v'ma'aser sheni chutz l'chayma. In other words, there's no chiddush whatsoever. Okay. So ihachi, if it's speaking, you took it inside Yerushalayim, and then you took it out. Ma'ila memra, what's the chiddush? Hachamayaskinon kigoin the ailinu v'tiblayu. You brought it in tevel, right? You brought it in. And you took it out in Tevel. Well, so now, guys, this is where I mistakenly jumped ahead when I went to Kasha. L'chayre, it was never a pnei abayis, and the chiddush is that what we'll view it as if it did. Why? We'll say matanis shalei hurmu kimi shehurmu dami. Matanis that weren't separated, we'll view as separated. So once we view it as separated, it's raw pnei abayis, and then you took it back outside, you get malchus. Okay, says the Gemara, and for the Gemara, my skina going to Alinu b'tivlayu, ukesavar, and Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion, matanai shloi hormoi, matnas kahuna that were not separated, kimishahur medamya, we'll view them as separated. We'll view them as separated. In other words, we have the shitas throughout Shas of something that's kol oimed liksars kekatzer dami, right? We could view it as cut already. It's in the state of being prepared to be separated. We'll view it separate. So we'll view this tevel as if ma'aser sheni was separated. Therefore, it was raw pnei abayis. Therefore, when you took it back outside, you have a chiyuv of malchus. So it's not a kasha. It's just so. In other words, the chiddush is that matana shlei hormoy bishleim. If you're telling me that it was separated and everything. There's no chiddush. But now you tell me it was brought in tevel and taken out as tevel. It wasn't physically separated. That's a chiddush. So Rabbi Yossi matana shlehomer is kamisha homer dami. V'hatanan, change the gersa. V'hatanan, it's a mishnah, right? It's a mishnah in Ma'aser Shein, right? The mishnah is a Ma'aser Sheni Perikil Mishnah Vav. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Aimer Mishum Rabbi Yossi lo nechalku beishamai beis Hillel al perish shaloi nigmara malachton. Paris that you didn't have a Gemar Malacha for Maisa. You didn't have a Gemar Malacha for Maisa. The Avru b'Yerushalayim, right? The Avru b'Yerushalayim, and you went into Yerushalayim, okay? So everyone's moida sheyifta, that you're able to be poida. So again, once Maisa Sheni guys got to Yerushalayim, you can't be poida. Once Ma'aser Sheni gets to Yerushalayim, you can't be poida. If you didn't have a Gemar Malacha, then there was no chiyuv of Ma'aser Sheni, so you could be poida. And once you were on Gemar Malacha, there was no chiyuv. Okay, everyone admits that. Sheyifta Ma'aser Sheni belahem v'yoichel b'chol makom, and you can eat it any place. V'alman nechlaku, where's the machloikis? Al perish shenigmar malachton v'avi b'shalayim. Perish that you had a Gemar Malacha, and you brought him to Yerushalayim. Shabei Shami oimrim. Yachzer b'maisa sheni shalahem v'yochlu b'Yushalayim. That Beis Shammai is of the opinion, right? Beis Shammai is of the opinion, right? That matanish shalei hormu is kamishu hormi dami. Therefore, what you can bring it back to Yerushalayim and eat it, right? And you can eat it. Rashi says sheyif the ma'aser sheni adayin yesh lepedia. The kibbutz like nigra malachta, and since it's speaking of nagma malacha, lo yarmina kamishu hormi dami. V'ro pnei chayma vein lepedia. We don't say that, but says Beis Shammai. You have to bring it back. Why do you have to bring it back? Because once it was inside, it was raw pnei. Well, you didn't separate it. Who said that? Beis Shammai. Is Rabbi Yossi going to want to be like Beis Shammai? No, he's going to want to be like Beis Hillel, who says the next thing. Says the Gemara. Beis Hillel yifta be paid to them, and you eat it at any place you want. Now, Rabbi Yossi obviously is going to come out according to Beis Hillel. Why does Beis Hillel say you can be paid the Ayim Rishalayim? Because you will not view them as what as Gemar Malacha. In other words, you won't view them as Kamisha Hormu. Again, guys, one more time. The only time you can't be paid the Ma'aser Sheni Yerushalayim is once it's Ma'aser Sheni. If it's not Ma'aser Sheni yet, you could be paid. So if you had a Gemar Malacha, but you didn't separate it, so therefore you could be paida. If you don't view it as Ma'aser Sheni. If you do view it as Ma'aser Sheni, you can't be paida. So now we have Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that what? You can't be paida. Why? Because it's Ma'aser Sheni. Beis Hillel says you could be paida. Why? Because it's not Ma'aser Sheni. Why? Because Beis Hillel is of the opinion Matana Shlei Hormo is Lav Kamisha Hormodamya. So now you can tell me Rabbi Yossi does not hold like what? Beis Hillel. You can tell me Rabbi Yossi does not hold like Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara, if you're going to say matanas that are not separated, we'll view them as separated. So how could you be paida? Once the mechitas were koilet, how could you be paida? Labrius. Rabba says Rabba, mechitza lechol deraisa. Mechitza le'inyan eating, that's the raisa. That you can eat only once you eat it inside. You can only eat inside the mechitza. But mechitza likleit, mechitza that to be koilet, that you can't be paid anymore, is the rabbanan. That's the rabbanan. The chigas rabbanan kiyasiyah be'ena. When the rabbanan geyser, that's when it's intact. Betivla, like geyser rabbanan. But in tevel they weren't geyser. So therefore, really, Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion matana shlei horm was k'mishur midami. If you look at Taisus, guys. Amarav mechitzas lechol midaraisa mechitzas loikim dabanan hilkach l'gabei din pedia lo yamina matana shlei horm k'mishur midami. Right? You don't say le'inya pedia le'inya shel kedua b'yas lefdaisa. Regarding pedia, which is the rabbanan, we don't say is k'mishur horma. Avlinyan shel loikim b'gvulin aminan k'mishur horm midami. V'hayroi pnei abayis. In other words, regarding the halacha of being inside and going outside and being chayiv to malchus, that will view as k'mishur horm midami. Linyan pedia, we won't view it because it's the rabbanon, and therefore you will be able to be paida. Ravina Amar Kigain did not get bikanya. Ravina says it's speaking where you're inside and you have you're like a hobo and you have a stick, and the Maisa Sheni is outside, and the chiddush is it's considered inside. The tifshoid boy the Rav Papa. Let's see Rashi Rivan on this. Ravina Amar how did I kin la'el? How big vulin like a shalish? The diak is dafkin Yerushalayim. You don't get Makos, but outside you would. The kaboy you might remember what's the chiddush. It's drich kigain. Did not get lay bikanya. It's speak. In other words, we're avoiding, fellas, the whole shaila of matanish shahuma kamisha humidanya. We're avoiding that whole shaila in the first place. That it's speaking that what where you want that you get mal. In other words, go 3 lines from the top. Like a shalish. Dafagav the lavra pnei chayma, right? So now you got into the Hormu Kamishum and Abkam. We're avoiding that. Rafina is saying no. You want to hear the Chiddush? The Chiddush is the Maisa Sheni never made it inside. But since you're inside, it's considered as if it's inside already. Back by us. Ravina Amar Rivan. Had the Daikinan Le'el. Had the Gvulan Loika Shalosh. Vikami Boy Mailam Emra. It's Rich Kigoin. The Nakale Bikanya. You're holding on to a stick. And on the stick, attached to the stick, is what is a is a bundle of Ma'aser Sheni that's not inside Yerushalayim. The Kamash Malon, the commander Roy Pnei Chaimedami will view it as what is it's Chayiv and Ma'aser Sheni. Veloika, Mishum Lesuchal. Ihoda Arche, if you distance yourself, the Achle and you eat it. V'tifshe minei boyd rapapa de boyleel. We pushed it yesterday. We said it to the teku. We pushed the shaila. So this Ravina's teretz is very wichtige teretz. It's avoiding machlokes beisham v'sil. Avoid. You don't have to say it's speaking that you bore it in betevel. You whatever tevel. It's ma'aser sheni, right? And you just it's ma'aser sheni, and it never made it into Yerushalayim, right? It never made it into Yerushalayim, but you were in Yerushalayim, that created the chiyuv. And that's the chiddush. And therefore, if begvulin, you get shalos malchus. Okay, we spoke at when we began this perek that there are many, many cases of malchus. The perek brings in the malchus where there's a chiddush. It brings in every case that's a chiddush. So therefore, we are picking and choosing the malchus. The malchus that we're discussing now is the following halacha. The malchus we're discussing now is the following halacha. It says la yikruchu karcha b'roisham by the kahanim guys. This is in Pashas Achriamos, I think. It says la yikru karcham b'roisham upasikanam lo yigalechu ubipsaram la yisru sirates. They should not go ahead and make a bald spot in their heads. Upasikanam, I sent this out. Upasikanam, and the edge of their beards lo yigalechu, they shouldn't shave. Ubipsaram la yisru sirates, and in their basa they shouldn't scratch. Okay, in Parshas, I think it's Re'eh. Bonim atem Hashem Elokeichem. You are sons to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Leisis skaididu. You shouldn't go ahead, and gouge yourself in your skin. Leisesimu karcha beineinechem lemeis. And you shouldn't place karcha, a bald spot, between your eyes lemeis. So two diyukim. One, by the kahanim it says roisham, karcha beroisham, and by Klal Yisrael it says beineinechem. By the Koyin, it doesn't tell you why you're doing it. By the it says, Vaisimu karcha beineinechem lemeis. So each one says something that the other one doesn't say. Right? One says Roisham, the other one says beineinechem. One does not mention mace, the other one mentions mace. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. So this is the one of the chidushim over here, that the goyim, the Darkei Amari, when someone would die, they would go ahead and pull their hair out, literally. You know, they're saying, don't pull your hair out. There's a source for that. They would pull their hair out. They would also go ahead and cut themselves. They would cut themselves, either with a kli, machloikas skaidus with a kli, or sritas with a kli, but it's cutting yourself as a result. Says the Mishnah, hakareach karcha b'roishai. Someone goes ahead and rips a bald spot on his head, and we're going to see it's lameis. V'hamakif pas roishai, and someone goes ahead and rounds off the pas roishai. Right? This is they would go, guys. Look what they would do. They're speaking about the temple. Over here you're bald, and by your ear, by your ear, hopefully you're bald, by over your ear. And they would go ahead and would take you like a monk. They would go ahead, it's like a kafla, and they would go ahead and cut that. See kids with manas heads, you see such a haircut, right? On top they have, and they're over here. Okay, so that's being makef roish. V'mashkes pas ziknoi, and this is cutting off your beard. This is cutting off. This is with a razor. This is cutting off with a razor. And v'asayrit tzrita achas alameis, right? Chayiv. If you go ahead and you cut yourself on a mace, you don't rip your hair out. You're cutting yourself. So we have four guys, four isurim. One is ripping out your hair, a bald spot. Two, being makif your head, cutting off your payas and being makif. Three is cutting your beard, and four with a razor, and four is what is cutting yourself on a mace. Sarit srita achas al chamesh mesim. If five people die and you cut once on 5 people, then you be chayiv 5. Or 5 cuttings on one meis chayiv. Akolachas v'achas. That's a chiddush. Ala roish shnayim. If hakafis roish chayiv twice. Achas mikan v'achas mikan. You're cutting off your payas, guys. So you, on one side and one side the other side. Each one is considered a separate end. If you look at Rashi, this is a very medical Rashi, fellas. Listen to this. It's the Rivon. Chayiv ala roish chayiv twice. Ala kafis roish. If you go ahead and take this haircut and cut off your payas, chayiv shtei malkiyas. You be chayiv twice. The shtei payas yesh shlei broish. You have two payas. End pay means end. You have two ends to the head. Sha roish kishtei chatichos. Roish is considered like two parts. Makos haseir is chaticha achas. The place where your hair grows is considered one. Umakam haponim v'hazaken chaticha achas. And the place of the face and the beard is the second. Umischaboy zuim zu b'tzada oizen. And they get connected over here, guys. That's where you draw by your oizen. On the side of your oizen, that's where it connects. So this is considered one part, and this is considered another part. This is considered one part, and this is considered another part. Okay. B'shem nikra peya. That's considered the end. Shesam sefer roish. That's the end of, right? Makam chibur haprakim. That's the place where they connect. You know, you tell your kid you couldn't get your payas. It's really the end. You're talking about this is where it connects over here. If you go ahead and open your mouth, you'll feel the bulge right by your paya, right? You never knew that. But nimsa sheyesh leishtei payas tzida mikan v'tzida mikan. One on one side, one on the other side. V'chayev aleim shtayim. Afilu notlim b'vasachas. Even if you do it at one time. B'shtei yodav. Guys, if you go like this, watch. You go like this. Whoop. You be chayiv. You be chayiv. Chayiv twice. Even do it once at the same time. Okay, back in the Mishnah. What? No. This is cutting off your payas. This is not the shaving with a razor. This is not shaving with a razor. Now the next thing, ala zaken shtayim mikan ushtayim mikan va'achas milmata. Zaken is 5 malchus, guys. Achas mikan. Now, literally means like this. There's a machlokes what it is. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Guys, look. 1, 2. This is the edge. The 2 tips over here, and over here is 5. Now, there's a machlokes what it is. Therefore, we don't shave any place on the head with a razor. We brought that in halacha. That's why we don't shave any. We're makbid, since we don't know exactly what these places are. We're makbid not to go ahead and shave it all with a razor. So there's 5. There's places over here. There's 2. For the Indian of Leisakifu Pasroisham is 2. Le'inyan Hashchas Pnei Zaken. There's 5. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, and nitla kulan ka'achas. If you go ahead and you take off the payas of your head, or you cut your beard at once, in chayiv ela achas, you only chayiv once. We don't pass on like Rabbi Eliezer. The ein chayiv, when you're speaking about shaving, at sheilenu betar, you take it off with a razor. Now we guys paskin that you be chayiv for taking off your payas, even if you use a scissor or right. The Rambam says tar is going on both. Now, late sheets of Rambam, you will be able to cut your hair off, not if you don't use a razor. Just like you can cut your beard off, right, not using a razor, you'll be able to cut your payas off without using a razor. We don't paskin like that. And as we paskin, there's 2 separate halachas: cutting off your payas, period, no matter what instrument you use; cutting your beard only with a razor. The Rambam says the razor is going on the payas also. Nimsalate the Rambam, you will be able to cut off your payas using a scissor or something else. Okay. If you cut the hair off, b'malake with a tweezer, hitni, some type of carpenter's tool, chayiv be chayiv malchus, not just a knife, not just a socket. Okay, Tan Rabbanan. La yikruchu karcha. It says la yikruchu yochel afilu kareach arba v'chamesh krichos la yichayv alachas. I might think if you rip your hair out 3, 4, 5 times, I think you only chayv once. Tamid loyma karcha. Guys, the word la yikruchu karcha is extra. Just say la yikruchu b'roisham, and we know it means it. Why do you have to say the word karcha, guys? So lo yikruchu b'roisham. Why does it have to say the word karcha? Why does it have to say the word karcha? L'chayiv al karcha v'karcha. It's the chayivat on each and every one. You be chayivat on each and every karcha. B'roisham, ma tamad loima. Why does it say roisham? V'shenemar loisis goydedu. It says in Parshas, in I think it's A again. Loisis goydedu. Goydedu is interesting. The common halacha you left from Loisis goydedu is you shouldn't become you shouldn't become separate bands of people. You shouldn't have like on Chalamoid, you shouldn't have a tefillah minion together with this minion. You should be in one wall, all together tzazamin. But that's a guda. But we learned Leisis Goydedu also means what? It means cutting. So it says Leisis Goydedu Leisisimu Korcha Beinei Nechem Lemeis. Yachalo Yechayev Ela Al Beinei Nayim Bilvad. Minayin Rabbis Kol HaRoish. Tamud Loima B'Roisham L'Rabbis Kol HaRoish. So again, we brought that pasuk in. I think it's very, very important, guys. We brought the pasuk in. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says La Yichul Kocham B'Roisham Upasikonam Lo Yigalechu. It says that what? You should not Yichul Kocham B'Roisham Pasikonam Lo Yigalechu. So it says Korcha. That means more than once. It says B'Roisham Dafka the head. Leisis Goydu says Beinei Nechem, and it says Lameis. So now, with those two things in mind, let's see the Gemara's drasha. Says the Gemara, Matam lev shnema Leisis Goydu Leisis Simu Korcha Beinei Nechem Lameis Yachal Chayiv Ela Beinei Einayim. I think you only chayiv if you rip out between the eyes, you cut between the eyes. Talmud Loimar l'Rabbis Talmud Loimar Minayin l'Rabbis Kol HaRoish Talmud Loimar b'Roisham l'Rabbis Kol HaRoish Ve'ein le'Ela b'Kahanim. I would think this is in the karcha, especially only by the kahanim, because the kahanim we know they get extra mitzvahs. Yisrael minayin, Hanan Yisrael is in the ballpark. Nemakan karcha, v'nemal halan karcha. V'gzeir shava says by the kahanim karcha, and it says what? Leisasimu karcha b'nei nechem by Yisrael. Mala halan chayva kol karcha v'karcha, just like by the kayin chayva each and every one. V'chayva ala roish kibnei nayim. Afkan so too by Yisrael chayva kol karcha v'karcha. V'chayva each and every one. V'chayva ala roish kibnei nayim. Umala halon on Mace, and just by Yisrael, where it says what openly, it says that what Beinei Nechem leMace, Afkans by the Kohen al Mace. In other words, if you rip your hair stam out for any other reason, you won't be chayiv. It's Dafka leMace, because look, in Pasuk Yudal it says leMace, it's got to be leMace. Hani dal make krichas hechidami. How you telling me you chayiv 4 or 5 times ripping out your hair? How do you accomplish that? Hechidami. Ilema b'zach is if you did one, you ripped that once, you ripped that twice, you ripped that 3 times, 4 times, uba chamesh hasros, and before each one, you had two Adam telling you, you're going to be chayiv. Pshita, then l'chayr chayiv on the base. It's pashit, you're going to be chayiv, right? What's the chiddush over there? You have 5 separate averis with each hasra goes ahead and separates each act of ripping out your hair. So of course you're chayiv in each and every one. Ella must be b'chad hasra mi mechayiv. So you're telling me that it gave you 1 asra and then you ripped out your hair 5 times? Why would you be chayiv? 5. Latanan, Nazir shayashaisa yayin kalayim. A Nazir who's not able to drink wine, yet he's drinking wine the whole day. Ein chayiv ala achas. Omuloy al tishta v'hu shayisa chayiv kol achas v'achas. So guys, you have a problem. You're telling me that go ahead, you're chayiv 5 times for ripping out 5 separate times. If you only had 1 asra, you only chayiv once. If you have 5 separate asras, then it's pasha you chayiv. So what's the chiddush? It's either you chayiv 5 or chayiv 1. If you chayiv 5 because you had 5 separate actions with 5 asra, that doesn't seem to be a chiddush. And if you only gave 1 asra, despite you have 5 actions, it's only chayiv once. Similar to the nazir, who what? The nazir had had a bunch of different actions. Each time he went ahead, what? And he drank. But he only had 1 asra. So l'chayra, why are you chayiv 5 times? Like tzricha, the sach chamesh etzba'osav nasha. He took like it's called a depilatory, and he put it on his fingers, and he went in his hair, and he pulled it down, right? V'oizvinu b'asachas. Tahavis lehasra l'chol chada v'chada. Guys, listen to the way that Rivon learns. Rivon, behez mekaymis. You went ahead, you put the depilatory on your fingers, you then put it in your hair, and now you have 5 fingers, it caused 5 separate bald spots. You be chayiv 5 times. Ubechad asra. Listen to this. The kivin de bevas achas ka'avid. My chazya de chayla hasra ahayetz botfei mehai. Why would that straw be more on your thumb than your pinky? Vasra suffik by mechashva. That's straw kuletz by shadya. We're going to go on each one, guys. Look at me. If you put a depilatory on all 5 fingers and you go ahead and put it through your hair with one asra, you can be chayav 5 times because that asra. Why is the chay going in this one more than this one? And that's the chiddush. One asra and I can be chayav 5 times. One asra can be chayav 5 times. What's the difference between this and nazir? Those are 5 separate actions over there, right? I'll taste, you drank. Over here, you have a sra, but the sra is going on with 5 things that are simultaneous. And therefore, you be chayiv. That's the big chiddush. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. The kama share karcha. What is the share of making a bald spot yet? So, guys, this is why we brought it in, fellas. Yeah, this is why we brought it in. We're saying there's many cases of malchus. Every case of malchus in this parak is a chiddush. Here's the chiddush that you be chayiv 5 times, putting the depilatory on 5 fingers, you be chayiv 5 times. That's the chiddush over here. Now, what's the share of karcha? Rav Huna amar kedei sheyira meiraisha. You should see a bald spot. Rav Yochanan Mishum Eliezer Rav Shimon ki gris. Gris is 6 by 6. It's 36 hairs. It's a Mishnah in the Goyim, the 6th parak Mishnah base. Ki gris, right? And acher ma'imim kedei sheyira meiraisha. Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva pligi ba tilsa tanoi. Chadam ki gris 36 hairs. V'chadam kedei sheyira meiraisha a bald spot. V'chadam kishtei sharos like two hairs. That would be you be chayiv for 2 hairs. V'ikedi mafki shtei saros, and those who take out 2 hairs, umal b'chida'atsha. They put in the size of a lentil, which is 4 hairs. V'simunecha, that you should make a siman that they took out 2 hairs and put it b'chida'atsha rather than taking out the gris. Is Baheres, the share of this is that Mishnah. Baheres is kegris. The mitzayra of Baheres is the size of a gris, which is a bean, which is 36 hairs. Umichya, and the tsaras of Michya is b'chida'atsha, is of what? Is 4 hairs. So if you mentioned, what are you doing? You're mentioning gris and b'chida'atsha. So it's b'chida'atsha, you're taking out the 2 hairs and putting in the 4, rather than taking b'chida'atsha and taking out the gris. But that's the symmetry. Since we're saying them together, they stay together. Tana, hanoitel mole piazug b'shabes chayiv. If someone goes ahead and cuts using a scissor, piazug, the literally the mouth of the sharp part, on Shabbos yichayiv. The kama mole piazug. Rav Yehuda b'shtayim, 2 hairs. Freding more of a tanya lekarcha shtayim. It's mashma lekarcha shtayim pizug. What must be more? Ema v'chein lekarcha, right? So ema v'chein lekarcha. In other words, it is 2, and say v'chein lekarcha is also ema v'chein kol shtayim. Tanya nam yahachi. Anoitel mali pizug b'shabes chayiv. V'kama mali pizug shtayim. Eliezer oima achas 1. If you're cutting out white hair from black hair, even 1 hair you'd be chayiv. It's us to do this afilu b'chayil. Mishum shenemar lo yilbash geves simlas isha. There's an issa that a man should not wear a woman's clothing. It's a siman Shulchan Aruch kuf pei beis. Certain halachas that apply to dressing, whether one can dye their hair. Right, it's brought down. You should not dye your hair, and it brought down that why you should not go ahead, Rod, and take out your white hairs. You shouldn't let the woman take out their white hairs. That what was that old story? Remember a young wife and an old wife. The old wife would take out the dark hairs, and the young wife would take out the white hairs, and the guy would end up totally bald. You remember that story? Didn't make it to you? Okay, whatever story I heard. Hey. Makiv pas roishay, person you said makiv pas roishay, but this is the issur of cutting off your payas. And as we said in the Mishnah, that it's 2 parts, and paya is the end of the both parts, top and bottom. Tanaban pas roishay, seif roishay. It means the end of the roish. It's understandable by the way he explained the Mishnah with the 2 parts to the head. It's the seif, right? Be'ezu seif roishay. What is considered seif roishay? Zeh hamashve. This person who goes ahead and he makes equal sidov la'chayrov oznoi ulpadachtoi. He makes his temple that has hair equal to the back of his ear and his forehead. Guys, there's no hair in your forehead. There's no hair in your back of your ear, and you're going ahead and making that all equal. You're taking off that area. So, Tani Tana Kamed Rav Chisda, a reciter of Baisa said in front of Chisda, Echad Makif, whether a person is the one rounding off the head, the Echad Nikif, and the person who has his head being, no, the Nikif is the one in the barber's chair. The Makif is the barber, the Nikif is the customer. And Nun means it's happening to you, the Nizik. The action is happening to you. Loika, you're going to get what? They're both going to get Malchus. Both going to get Malchus. Amalei Rav Chisda, man de ochel tamrei ba'arbaila. Someone eats bread and dates in a basket. Lucky? No, what did he do? It's just like you're eating dates in a basket. It did nothing that you should get Malchus. Just sitting in a barber's chair, you should get Malchus. Says Damalach Mani, Rabbi Yehudi, the Amar, Lav Shein B'Maisa, like in a love. In other words, you're right. You didn't do an action, but you allowed it to happen to you. Lav Shein B'Maisa, like in love. We learned that according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi says, B'Makav La'atzmai, the guy went ahead and shaved himself. So he chayv twice, right? Once for being the Makif and two for being the Nikif. The Divrei Kol, and this would be not only according to Rabbi Yehuda, this would be according to everybody. Ravashi says, B'Mesayim, the Nikif is helping the Makif. He's in other words, he's doing an action. He's taking as he's shaving his head, he's helping him along. So those are three possibilities why the Nikif would what get Malchus. Mashkas pasik, no, someone who goes ahead and cuts off the 5 points of his beard. Tanabonim pasik, no, seif ziknoi, bezu seif niknoi. That's shiboles ziknoi. Those are the 5 payos that the Mishnah counts. Those different areas. Again, la halacha, we don't know exactly where they are. We're makman out that we don't cut with the razor. Everyone knows that. But again, you always go to the barber who says, "Can you cut sometimes they would do on the back of your head. It's not a problem, right? You have to teach the barbers, and they learn very quickly. What?
Putting the cream over here.
Then you have a problem. Yeah. No, they know. They know. The seret, the pasuk says, "V'seret lenefesh, v'seret lenefesh lo sitnu b'bsarchem, u'ksayvis kaka lo sitnu b'chem ani Hashem." You shouldn't go ahead and cut lenefesh. And no, service kaka, that's tomorrow's daf. That's a tattoo. That's a tattoo. Okay. The seret yachal afil seret al beisoy. Shenafal vasfinasay shetava bayam. Let's say you had a tremendous financial loss. Your house fell in, or the ship carrying your cargo sank. I might think if you cut yourself on that, you'd be chayiv. Talmud Loimar, it says the word v'seret lenefesh. Dafka ein chayiv el ala meis bovad. Only on a mace. How do you know if you go ahead and cut 5 times on one mace that you chayiv? It says what? I guess the extra vav of viseret, and therefore we learn out what that you chayiv what for each and every one. Okay, so the extra vav. Rabbi Yossi, I remember nine misarit street achas al heis meis through chayv al kol achas v'achas tamad loima lenefesh. It says lenefesh l'chayv al kol nefesh nefesh. Fred the Gemara v'afiktei lebeisay shenafal l'svinasay shetav v'yom. We said lenefesh to teach me dafka lemeis and not for other financial loss. How can you teach me that you chayv al kol nefesh v'nefesh? I'm at aleph. K'sav Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef is the opinion sarita ugadida achasi. The issa of sarita of leisiskoididu and the issa of sarita. So therefore, he knows mace from Leisis Koidedu, because it says mace there openly. The male it says mace over there openly, because Hasam the mace. The male has the nefesh extra to teach me what I'll call nefesh nefesh. Amashmul, Amisari Bikli. He goes ahead as Misarit he uses a kli, a knife, or some types of implement that would cut into his skin, chayiv. Right? Smashmet, you only chayiv, but Mesibei. Srita ugadida achasi, it's the same, right? It's the same, and it's mashma srita is afilu not bekli, ella shesrita biyad ugadida bekli. So you see, srita is what is biyad not bekli. Says no, who damar Rabbi Yossi that he holds like Rabbi Yossi before that he holds that what afilu bekli. Okay, Tani Tana Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. A person who makes a hole himself, right? Some type of almes. Bein she'asa biyad. Doesn't make a difference what he used. He did it biyad. Ubein bekli chayiv min chayiv. However, al avodas kechavim, he does it for avodas zara. He's cutting himself avodas zara. Biyadi bichayiv, bekli bipata. Because the avodas zara wasn't to cut yourself with a kli. Says Gemara, if we learned the opposite. So you see that they used the kli, they used a sword or a spear to go ahead and cut themselves. Ela must say the opposite. Biyad you'd be pater, and bekli you would be what? Chayiv. Okay, we'll stop over. Can I make a kasha?